Hi folks, welcome to Cybersecurity Awareness TV, episode 370, recorded October 9th, 2021. My name is Mac Jackson Jr. I'm your cybersecurity consultant and host. If it's the first time you've seen this show, I would want to tell you guys that what we talk about here is cybersecurity news, cybersecurity awareness, interviews, and tips that you can use to protect yourselves against the fastest growing crimes of the 21st century. And I'd like to thank everyone who's been a part of our show, supported us over the years, and sent us information regarding cybersecurity awareness and their issues that we can help them to resolve. And folks, if you'd like to also support us and send us your questions or comments about our show and information, you could do that by contacting me at macjacksonjr.com. That's macjacksonjr.com. Folks, we're on all social media, so remember to subscribe, like, and share Cybersecurity Awareness TV. In this episode, we are talking about cyber news. We're going to talk about ransomware groups, folks, that are attacking all sorts of industries in our country. We've talked about the healthcare industry that had an extreme number of cyber attacks that locked out different hospitals and put patients' lives in jeopardy. But folks, these hackers are now going after law enforcement, police stations, and police forces. We're going to talk about what happened to a police force in Washington, D.C. that had a cyber attack that literally almost shut them down. And we have an interview, folks, with the director of CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Division of the U.S. Homeland, and that will be also in our first segment. In our second segment, we have an interview with Nevada Attorney General Laura Tucker. She's one of my interviews that I've done, and I want to play that for you guys because it's information that you need to hear, especially if you live here in the state of Nevada. And of course, our third segment is our weekly cybersecurity tips that you can use to protect yourselves from these type of cyber attacks. But in our cyber news, cyber groups, folks, are on the rampage, and they are rising. They are a criminal organization that's some cases sponsored by nation states, other cases are sponsored by groups of hackers that are trying to do nefarious things to acquire your personal information and personal data. Healthcare industries, as I mentioned earlier, have been affected by these type of cyber attacks that have locked down hospitals and caused patients deaths. That's right, folks, deaths through these types of ransomware because information cannot be accessed by doctors and healthcare providers. But folks, these hackers are now hacking into police departments and doing some nefarious activities that are shutting down police forces here. One of the stories that I speak about in my speeches across the country on cybersecurity awareness is a story I talk about regarding copy machines. Companies have copy machines in their organization, folks. These copy machines are nothing more than computers that have hard drives based within them. So any documents that are being scanned to be emailed out or sent out via on a drive or made copies of or stored as a spooler inside the hard drive of the printer. If these printers are hacked into or even sometimes resold to another customer, that hard drive isn't cleaned out or cleared out of that data. So in the story I talk about is that there was a hard drive back in New Jersey and it was purchased within a printer, and when this printer was opened up, the hard drive was taken out and the information was analyzed. And folks, the information that was analyzed was very, very very sensitive, let's say. It was from a police department. That's right, folks. It had information on people who are convicted, their personal information, when they would appear in courts, all types of information that can be used against the individual that, of course, this department, the police department, did not want to have admitted out to the public. But this is just one example of what you should do in your organization if you have a printer that has a hard drive within it. If you're getting ready to sell this printer, you need to have a disposal policy within your organization that you can dispose of this printer and clean the hard drive from it. In this upcoming video, we're going to talk about, we're going to show you a police department in Washington, D.C. that had a cyber attack and literally tried to shut down the department. Here in this video, roll this tape.
All right. An online group claiming it hacked the Washington, D.C. Police Department is demanding a ransom, or else it will leak sensitive information about investigations and informants. According to the New York Times, some information has already been released, such as lists of arrests and persons of interest. The organization behind the alleged attack says it has more than 250 gigabytes of data from the department. A police spokesperson says that they are aware of, quote, unauthorized access to its server, adding that they've engaged the FBI on the matter. So for more on this, I want to bring in CBSN tech reporter Dan Patterson. So Dan, what have we learned about this hack, and why does it appear that this police department was targeted?
Hi, Anne-Marie. So DCPD was targeted by this group, Baduk, which is a relatively new hacking group. They popped up in January and then in February with this kind of novel strain of ransomware. DCPD appears to be the third police department targeted by this group, but they've also hit a medical testing firm, a heating company, and even the Houston Rockets basketball team. According to the site Threat Post, which tracks data breaches and cyber attacks, at least one firm has paid the $85,000 ransom. So we're kind of learning a little bit more about this hack day by day, but this appears to be a financially motivated group targeting low-hanging fruit.
You know, if I've learned anything from you, I've learned that these sort of attacks usually require some level of technological sophistication, but then also there's usually like a lo-fi way that they manage to gain access. How was this ransomware group able to gain access to this information, and are their tactics significant?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, Anne-Marie. So we're still learning details about how DCPD was specifically targeted. It may take some time to learn the particulars. But what we do know is that phishing is on the rise, especially during the pandemic. This is when you receive an email or a text message with a link that seems legit. When you click, it steals your username and password. So look, this is, like you said, kind of a sophisticated hack, or at least launching a custom strain of ransomware requires some coordination and planning. But phishing is a really simple and effective method of infiltrating targets.
So, you know, this is just the latest example of a cybersecurity threat against a U.S. government entity or an American company. Typically, you know, we see sort of the culprits are often Japan, oh, sorry, not Japan, sorry, Russia, China, sometimes Iran. Looking at the big picture, just how concerning is this, and what's the end game?
Yeah, this is pretty concerning, Anne-Marie. So with or without nation state activity, and there's no evidence that indicates nation states are behind this, but like you said, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, all of these countries have the motivation and capability to launch attacks like this, but so do run-of-the-mill cybercrime groups and even lone wolf or hacktivist organizations, because like you said a moment ago, although this takes some planning and sophistication, it's not really that hard to launch ransomware attacks. And because the damage can be so severe, we've seen cities and states targeted and taken down by attacks like this. Even small and medium-sized businesses, large enterprise companies have had to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to get their systems back online. There's no guarantee that the hackers are going to return your data to you or give you a decryption key. So this is a real big problem, and it kind of shows the scale of vulnerability across systems and networks.
You know, now the DC Police Department isn't the only police department that was targeted, but as soon as I heard that, you can't help but to think about the January 6th insurrection, all the investigations connected to that, the fact that a lot of the organizing of that insurrection, you know, it was done online, it was done in these sort of social media platforms. So I suppose when you pull all that stuff together, it's not surprising that the DC Police Department would be a target. And not surprising to me, hopefully not surprising to them. So I'm wondering, like, what sort of infrastructure is in place to protect them from future attacks?
Yeah, so Anne-Marie, we don't have evidence that this is linked to the Capitol insurrection, but If I were a cybercrime or a hacker or even a nation state hacker, I would look at this massive volume of data that came from the Capitol insurrection and see, okay, there's a ton of vulnerability here, which means there is a ton of opportunity. If you are willing to strike governments, hospitals, small and medium-sized businesses, this is a really good time, especially when we're all working remote, we're all using Zoom. Oftentimes, even those who are the most security cautious can make mistakes that are exploited by bad actors. So we do need upgrades to all sorts of digital infrastructure. However, when it comes to places like your state and local government or hospitals, even police departments, it's really hard to take critical systems offline, even for a short amount of time, to do the needed upgrades. And that doesn't even address the lack of funds that a lot of these places have. So once again, although there's no evidence tying this hack to the Capitol insurrection, this is a great example of the vulnerabilities that exist in systems across the world.
Yeah, totally. And so we don't know how long this group has been trying to gain access, but we have learned from you and others, Dan, that often there are thousands of attacks that go on sort of all day long, and every once in a while one slips through, and that's all that it takes. Dan, thank you so much.
Great to see you.
Wow, folks, as you can see, there are all types of areas that hackers are trying to infiltrate to get our personal identifiable information. We must be vigilant in protecting this data. And one of the biggest ways we could do is tell somebody of this video and this story that you've heard from me here on Cybersecurity Awareness TV. And that's one of our first steps, to let people know what's going on, what's happening. Our U.S. Department of Security here and within our government has several departments that are used to combat the cyber attacks that are going on across our country and across the world. Our cyber defenses are strong, folks, and we are striking back and winning the cyber attack. Again, with every win, there is another way that hackers are looking for vulnerabilities within our U.S. government and businesses. But our cyber teams are ready. The U.S. government has an organization called the CISA, which stands for the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. This agency is directed by Jan Easley. Jan Easley is discussing in this video with CBS News morning show on the cybersecurity mitigation principles that she has set forth to protect our homeland. Roll this tape.
Welcome back to CBS Mornings at 7:30. We have an exclusive interview for you, introducing you to the woman in charge of the country's cybersecurity. Jen Easterly is her name, and we're getting her unique insight on the growing threat from online attacks. CISA, that's the name of the organization she's the director of, says there's a cyber attack every 40 seconds somewhere in the world. And one of the biggest threats is ransomware. That's where cyber criminals have stolen millions of dollars by freezing computer access and shutting down operations until that ransom is paid. Nancy Cordes sat down with Easterly in her first TV interview to find out what the agency is doing to protect government, businesses, and individuals.
Let's see what I can do with that.
Jen Easterly is drawn to tough puzzles.
What? There you go.
It's a trait that could serve her well as she takes on one of the nation's fastest growing threats, cyber attacks.
We only have about 2,500 employees. How do you possibly tackle a challenge that large? CISA was built to be something different, not another lumbering government bureaucracy, really something that's much more like a hybrid public-private collaborative.
CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, was established to convince corporate America to better protect itself and its customers from the kinds of debilitating hacks we saw this summer.
A suspected cyber attack has forced a major energy pipeline in the U.S. to shut down operations.
A notorious crew of cyber crooks linked to Russia is demanding $70 million in Bitcoin to unfreeze computers at hundreds of companies around the world.
Just this month, hackers posted some hospital patients' data online and forced Howard University in Washington, D.C. to temporarily halt classes.
Why are cyber criminals going after hospital systems?
They are going after any entity
that they think they can get money out of. If they can lock up your very sensitive data, and of course, as we know, hospitals have a lot of sensitive data. So if they can figure out a way to get money, they're going to do it.
But getting businesses to work with the government isn't always easy. When Colonial Pipeline was hit by ransomware in May, it took days for the company to share crucial details with CISA.
I think that we should look at fines.
Easterly supports legislation that would require companies to report intrusions within 24 hours.
It is important that we get that information as quickly as possible so we can both render assistance to the victim, but importantly, be able to share that information as quickly and rapidly as possible to be able to prevent other victims. They're actually super cool.
Her agency has also tried to find creative ways to help individual Americans protect themselves from misinformation,
pushing American voters to the brink,
and cyber intrusions.
If you only do one thing, turn on multi-factor authentication. Literally, that took about 15 seconds, and now you are 99% less likely to get hacked.
That Rubik's Cube thing, it's kind of her calling card. Her office in Arlington is filled with them.
I was a goofy kid. I just got obsessed with solving it. I would bet the toy store owners and clerks that if I could solve it in less than 2 minutes, that they would give me a free one.
That's crazy.
There we go, yeah.
She's been taking on cybercrime since it started.
That one was my graduation from West Point.
As an Army lieutenant, she helped establish U.S. Cyber Command, then advised 2 presidents, one Republican, one Democrat, on counterterrorism.
You know, I'm an independent. I think it's incredibly important that CISA be seen as a nonpartisan, non-political agency.
Her predecessor, Chris Krebs, shared that view, but he was drummed out by President Trump for declaring that November's election had been safe and secure.
There is no foreign power that is flipping votes.
The investments I'm proposing will be...
President Biden's Build Back Better Act would give CISA another $100 million to train and hire more staff, which could help Easterly with another puzzle she wants to solve.
What percentage of your workforce here is women, and how do you get more of them into the field? Not enough. And then broadly, I think it's only 20% nationwide. I want to have the type of culture that will be able to reflect what it means to be inclusive, what it means to be innovative. And really, if young girls and women see me, then they can see themselves in cyber.
Some of the most high-profile cyber attacks this year have come from hackers in Russia and China, who are often outside the reach of U.S. law enforcement. That's why Easterly says that the best way to stop them is for U.S. companies to harden their cybersecurity, especially companies that control critical infrastructure like rail, aviation, pipelines, and electricity. Back to you guys.
Nancy, it's a big job. She seems well prepared for it. About the Rubik's Cube thing, first of all, how are you at Rubik's Cube? Did she teach you?
You know, I was hopeless in the 80s, and I'm still hopeless today, which is why I'm not running a tech agency.
Us as well. I could mess it up in 3 seconds. I don't think I could solve it in 3 seconds.
That was always the thing. Take off the stickers, and then suddenly you've solved the problem.
Yeah.
When do you bring out the Rubik's Cube? You know, if you're at the job interview and they say, we're going in a different direction, and as soon as you walk out, you say, wait a minute.
I think you do.
Can I show you something?
I think you do it real early.
Yes, it is a skill I wish I had.
Chris Krebs, outgoing CISA director. Can you do that? Can you match it?
That's the question.
That's the question.
Nancy,
I don't know.
Thank you.
Right.
Boy, folks, thanks again, everyone over at CISA and Jan Easterly, for your definitely great work in helping protect our homeland from these particular cyber attacks. In summary, folks, a combination of businesses and the government agencies working together is our best defense to mitigate and fight back against these cyber attackers. We all must do our part to protect our business and our data assets. But folks, you can do your part too. Become a Patreon here at patreon.com/Mac Jackson Jr. to help us in our research and getting this information out to you on how to protect yourselves from the fastest growing crimes of the 21st century. Folks, we'll be right back here on Cybersecurity Awareness TV after these messages.
You can help limit the damage from identity theft with some quick responses. Placing a fraud alert on your credit reports, filing a complaint with the FTC, and then filing a police report. Taking these steps will give you some important tools to deal with other problems that may come up, like charges you didn't authorize on your credit card, phone, or utility bills, like ATM withdrawals or debit card purchases you didn't approve, like getting a letter from the IRS saying someone has filed for a tax refund in your name. Keep records of your calls and copies of documents. If these problems do come up later, you'll have the necessary tools close at hand. For more tips and tools on dealing with identity theft, visit ftc.gov/ID theft. That's ftc.gov/ID theft.
Hi folks, welcome back to Cybersecurity Awareness TV. In this segment, I have an interview that I did with Nevada Attorney General Office, Laura Tucker. She's part of the Consumer Affairs Protection Agency here in the state of Nevada. And this interview, Laura discusses the scams that are going on that affects the consumers here in the state of Nevada. Folks, scammers are on the rampage. They are trying to find ways to get your personal and private information. You need to be aware of these scams and understand that these companies are illegitimate, and their primary goal, again, is to get information from you that you do not wish to give to them. Look at this video, folks, and definitely learn some information about how scammers are, what they're trying to do here in the state of Nevada. Hello, folks. This is Mac Jackson Jr. from Technology Review, and I'm here with Laura Tucker. How you doing, Laura?
I'm great. Thanks, Mac. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for meeting with me today. Laura Tucker is a senior Deputy Attorney General for Nevada Consumer Affairs Department, right? Consumer Protection.
Yes, it's the Nevada Attorney General's Office, Bureau of Consumer Protection. It's a long title.
Yes, long title. Very good. Well, I want to talk with you today, too, and I'm glad we got a chance to talk again. You've been on my TV show before, and since we're going through, there are quarantines and people are staying at home and working from home, I want to talk about some of the issues that your office has discovered, or you'd like to have our audience know about protecting ourselves from scammers out there.
Yeah, right. So a lot of what we're seeing right now during the coronavirus pandemic are mainly phishing scams, social engineering scams, and bait and switch scams, which I can go over each of those briefly. And then, of course, there's a lot of scams that are related to the new stimulus package, both for small businesses and for individuals getting a stimulus check from the government.
Correct. And how are these scams being implemented, or how are victims being scammed by these type of bad guys?
So we're seeing the same sorts of platforms that are for all the other scams. It's just a different take on it. A lot of email scams, text message is a big one now, and now social networking as well. Sometimes they might reach out to you directly with an email, which is your traditional phishing scam, or they might reach out to you via Facebook Messenger, or another kind of like direct messaging on the social media platforms, or advertising, and that's a little bit different, kind of evolving area that we've been seeing. And then there's the traditional text messages or phone scams where people are getting phone calls.
Okay, so these phone calls are done. I've seen them here in our office. We see them ourselves, but give us your experience on that. So when someone calls on the phone, do they declare themselves as from law enforcement or from a governmental agency?
We've seen this in a bunch of different ways now. They could be saying that they're from the IRS, that they're from a bank, or maybe that they're from some sort of local agency if it's here in Nevada. But, so they might say they're a government official or an employee, and they might be saying something like, hey, we'd like to verify your social security number for the new check, or this is your bank and we'd like to ask for your account information. But that should be a red flag for you if you get one of these phone calls, because your bank's not going to call and ask you for your account number because they already have it.
Right. Very true. Very true. Yeah, I see some of these scams becoming very sophisticated, where they have collected data from other areas where they've broken into a breach, and they have just enough information to get the consumer to believe that it's them that they have the authority to talk to. So what were some ways that you would suggest that consumers should beware of if they get these type of calls?
First of all, a lot of these different businesses and government agencies are not going to be reaching out to you by phone call. I know that right now the IRS is trying to set up a web portal, so then that way you can check on the status of your stimulus check. That's not quite set up yet, but they're hoping to try to get those checks out by mid-April. We're all kind of going through finding out the same information at the same time.
Sure.
The other thing is that you can reach out directly to your bank if you're interested in that small business loan. They did get completely overwhelmed with requests to fill out the paperwork for that. So it might take a few more days still for people to be able to get through. But one thing you want to keep in mind is that there's really no way to speed up the process. So if someone calls you and said, hey, we're going to charge you, if you pay $50 or some kind of fee, we can go ahead and get those documents through to you very quickly, and you'll get your loan in the mail quicker than everyone else. Right now, there's no programs that do that. So that's one red flag for that one.
Very good, yes. And another one I'd like to add to that too, is when the IRS when they do have their URL set up, is for consumers to be very careful when they are entering that URL that they may get from an email, because you can always spoof a different email address or a URL address from your bank or the IRS. So just be very, very careful, because these hackers and scammers, they have created their these fake pages to look exactly like the IRS or exactly like your bank, with pieces of information from your account on the screen. And all you need to fill out maybe the last 4 digits of your social security number, because they have the rest of it, right? Just enough information that you think that they're legitimate, but they're not. So be very, very careful.
Yeah, and one way to avoid that is to really make sure that you're only clicking on links from legitimate sources. If it comes in an email, I would maybe just avoid it altogether. But you know, if you're on a legitimate news site, one that you know is a true one, like your local newspaper, or if you're on the AG's website and you click on a link from there, we make sure that our links are all correct before we put them up there.
Yes, true, very true, very, very true. So with this type of scams, there's the SBA loans as well, where bad guys or scammers are trying to get small businesses to go to a website. So they're doing it in several different ways, which is really interesting. They're using social engineering via emails, fake websites, but they're also using the one-on-one by picking up a phone and calling the person. Now, I find that that's very brazen, that you could actually call the individual with partial information regarding their financial background, about their business, because they stole that from another site that they've hacked into, and trying to get the individual to act on a certain type of scam.
Yeah, and not only are people are these scammers able to get stuff from different hacks, but also aware of the stuff that you're putting online on social media. I mean, everyone wants to be able to advertise their business, but really try to think about what the person on the phone is telling you, and if this is something that maybe you've put up somewhere that's on some site somewhere that is publicly available information that's using to try to trick you. Right.
Try to use information to trick you. It's amazing what people will do. They can only use their power for the good. Really amazing. So as far as filing complaints, what would you suggest victims do if they suspect that they've been scammed? How would they contact your office, and how does that work?
So the easiest way to file a complaint with us is on our website. That is ag.nv.gov. And you can go ahead on there and you can fill out the complaint form online. I would suggest to include everything that you can that might help document what happened, because the more information that you give us, the easier it is for us to investigate. If you don't have access online, then the phone number is, I just have to glance it over here. It's 888-434-9989. And that's the hotline that we've set up.
One more time.
888-434-9989.
Great.
And someone should be able to walk you through the process of how to fill out a complaint form with our office. And we've got our constituent services has been working nights and weekends to try to get a handle on all the complaints and get them to our complaint team to start addressing these.
Great. And these complaints, have most of them been addressed, or have the bad guys been prosecuted from this?
So so far, the whole process is that the complaint form comes in and it's evaluated by our constituent services, and it's routed to the correct department. A lot of times it goes to ours in the Bureau of Consumer Protection, but we also work with an agency called Nevada Consumer Affairs, whom I know has been a guest on your show before.
Yes.
And they help us out as well with investigating these complaints. And so we'll evaluate the complaint, we'll go through all the documentation, and we'll usually send a letter to the person or the company that the complainant is filing the complaint against to try to figure out more information about what's going on. And sometimes to inform them of the law if they're not aware. For example, not quite technologically related, but we're also handling a lot of the eviction moratorium complaints.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, as you may know, the governor issued an eviction moratorium during the state of emergency, and the Bureau of Consumer Protection is handling that. So if we get a complaint of someone that's trying to evict someone right now, then we try to work with the landlord to try to figure out what is up and just inform them of the law if they're not aware.
Also, you mentioned, we talked about price gouging as well.
Yes, so we're also taking in price gouging is basically when someone is, or a company or someone is charging an overinflated price. We don't have laws exactly on point in Nevada, but we're working with what we've got to try to address those issues. It's important to keep in mind that just because someone is charging a very high amount for something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's price gouging. So it's a very case-by-case basis if you're filing one of those complaints.
Like hand sanitizer and toilet paper that people are hoarding and then trying to sell it on eBay.
Yes, and that's been a problem all across the country that AG's offices are trying to address.
Right. Interesting. Well, that's good to hear that consumers have advocacy groups and law enforcement out to protect them for these type of issues, because you're right, a lot of this going on. And it's good to know that your department agency is there to help people out as well. We definitely appreciate you being on our show today. And I would like to talk to you again and keep in touch with us on what's going on at the AG's office and some of these prosecutions that are happening. I'd like to have you on again, and we'll talk about some more things related to identity theft and cyber crimes. That's been very much on the increase, what's going on right now as well.
It has been. Yeah, thanks, Mac, for having me.
You're very, very welcome. Hold on, we'll be right back with you, okay? Folks, we'll be right back here in Technology Review after these messages.
According to the FBI, 97% of retailers have been hacked by cyber attacks. 97%. Train your staff on the new red flag rules to mitigate identity theft. Plus, protect your customers and employee data and develop an identity theft prevention policy for your business. Learn how to detect and report a cyber attack to your customers and protect your company's image from a cyber attack. Identity theft is the fastest growing crime of the 21st century, but there is something you can do. Contact MJ Computer Concepts at 702-868-0808. Don't become a statistic. Call MJ Computer Concepts at 702-868-0808.
Hi folks, welcome back to Cybersecurity Awareness TV. I'm your host, Mac Jackson Jr., your consultant. In this segment, we talk about cybersecurity tips that you could use to protect yourselves from cyber attacks. Folks, our best defense, again, as we always say against cyber attacks, is through education. So what you can do, your first step, is things you learn on this show, tell a friend and ask them to tell their friends. The more people they're aware of what they can do to protect themselves, the harder it will be for hackers to acquire and get our information. Knowledge is power, folks, and knowledge is also currency. Again, we'll review Here we'll talk about passwords. Make sure you have a strong passphrase, folks, in all of your applications that you're using, and change them regularly. Now, we get emails from those of you who have said, Mac, it's really hard to try to remember all these different passwords. Should I write them down, a piece of paper? How should it be done? Maybe I should have sticky notes on my computer so I can be reminded of myself what my password is, right? Folks, no. Those key things that you have writing these information down on a piece of paper, you're just creating a dollar bill. Think about it, folks. That piece of paper has no value. When you write your password on it, you created a dollar bill. It's a form of money. Money that hackers can use to buy and sell your information in the dark net. So definitely protect yourself. Have your passwords stored in a password management system, such as LastPass from LastPass.com or Dashlane. These two software packages used for password management are one of the most popular ones that are used in our country and around the world today. They can encrypt all of your passwords for you into one particular system. Thereby, you only have to remember just one password with your user ID. I would suggest your one password that you'll use is to create a passphrase. That's right, folks, a passphrase. It could be an English sentence, something that you can understand, that your 5-year-old or your 90-year-old grandmother can understand how to get into your system, something that's easy for you and difficult for hackers to figure out. And let the password management system encrypt all of your thousands of passwords you have that you use online and on your browsers to make it difficult for hackers. Now, that is my advice I would give you guys every week to make sure you guys are utilizing this until we can protect ourselves, until there's no more hacking, which will be forever. All right, folks, the other thing I want to tell you about is make sure that you check your bank statements on a regular basis and use your social media for that. That's right. Anytime you buy something, sell something online, use your phone like you would on your social media. You know how we all are. We wake up every morning and see if we get any notifications on our social media. Do that for your banking institution as well. And if you see any suspicious activity on your account, make sure you contact your financial institutions immediately and get that particular issue rectified. Folks, another one is in your health insurance. Now, this is something that you may not know about because you don't see it right away, because most of us have insurance and we don't notice it when there's a bill for $10,000 that comes through and it's paid for by health insurance. But folks, what if that $10,000 bill was not on a procedure that you had? That's right, folks. It could have been a procedure that a victim, another victim, that paid a hacker for your particular insurance information credentials. That's right, folks. Healthcare insurance is now one of the fastest leading crimes done regarding identity theft. And what you can do to protect yourself, make sure that you look at your health records on a regular basis. It's good to take a look at this like every quarter, especially if you have doctor visits that you do and certain procedures that you are taking. Check your medical records with your healthcare provider and see if you see anything suspicious on your healthcare forms, because it could affect your health as well. These are just some of the things we talk about on our show, ways of protecting yourselves. And every week we ask you to send us your emails regarding questions you have on cybersecurity awareness. You can send your emails to mjackson@mjcc.com. That's mjackson@mjcc.com. Or leave me a voicemail or call my office at 702-868-0808 with your questions regarding cybersecurity awareness. And we'll talk about tips and things you do to protect yourselves. That is all we have, folks, for this week, and we want you to join us next week for more information on Cybersecurity Awareness TV. We'll see you then. Take care.